Are you a chess player that just started learning openings? Are you getting overwhelmed with all the lines and variations you could play and your opponent could play as well? Would you say that you're generally a tactical and aggressive chess player? If that is the case, then this video is for you. In this video, I'm going to show an opening that I've played as a kid, only when I was 11 or 12 years old. And this opening by itself, it was my only tool to get to 1800 ELO. Yes, you heard me right. 1800 ELO using this opening with white. That was my only weapon. So without further ado, let's jump ahead into the position, into this opening. And the opening I'm talking about is what we call the Scotch Gambit. The Scotch Gambit is an opening that involves a pawn sacrifice, just like any other gambit. You play e4, and this opening, you could reach it or achieve it if your opponent plays e5, knight f3, attacking this pawn, knight c6. Now, you probably have seen this. It's like the classical setup in openings, even for beginners. You develop this bishop here or there or there, or you move your knight. But what I'm going to show you right now is quite aggressive, and it leads to very open positions. So lots of tactics and sharp positions, edgy positions on the board. And you will see that your opponent will start collapsing within few moves because defending is much more difficult than attacking. So you immediately strike the center with d4. And the idea is you're kind of forcing your opponent to capture your pawn, and you're not capturing it back. You could capture it back, but this is another opening. It's the Scotch game, but what we're doing is called the Scotch Gambit, which means we play bishop c4. Now this is quite aggressive. Why is that? Because you will see that your opponent, you will face two kinds of opponents in this kind of setup. There are the pawn grabbers, the greedy ones. They will see this pawn, realize that it's attacked by two pieces, and they're going to try to protect it. I'm going to show you several lines in details and show you how many sacrifices and crazy lines you could reach only using this basic opening, let's say. There's type 1, the ones that are going to play this move, which can be, of course, you could confuse your opponent with two moves in this position. And these are the two moves that I'm going to teach you in depth in this line or in this opening. First one is c3. Your opponent is going to be like, what? You gave me a pawn on d4 and you're giving me a second pawn on c3? If they capture, believe it or not, you have two moves or even three moves. There are so many moves in this line. The first one is just sack your bishop. Why is this move brilliant? Because the king has to capture. Once the king captures, you give a check on d5. And what is that? This is a fork. Regardless where the king goes, of course, the best move is to go to f8. You just snatch the bishop with a check. e6, you could always move your queen out of the way. You do not capture here. You could, but I would strongly suggest you just move out of the way, because if your opponent captures here, you capture with the bishop, and this is a very deadly attack. And you already have like a 1.3 or 4 advantage. You don't have to bother with the details and these numbers since you're just getting started, but this is very difficult to defend. Your opponent can no longer castle. You can castle on the next move. If your opponent plays this, you could just castle here. And it's winning, it's crushing. You could jump with a knight to g5, of course. And you will see that, and bring the second knight to the attack, and you will see that your opponent will collapse. This is the first move, responding to capturing on c3. There's another crazy move, which is queen b3. Queen b3, you're building a battery, in this case, and you will capture shortly. What I personally play, and I find it's not, of course, the engine does not agree with me or does not think it's a powerful move necessarily like the other two. I just castle and offer even a third pawn. If my opponent captures and I capture, it's basically, this attack is very devastating. And I will show you what would happen if the knight moves out of the way. Same concept. Check and check. And you are winning. Let's summarize what we've seen so far. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, e takes d4, bishop c4, developing quite fast, giving up the pawn. Now we could castle already. We talked about the pawn grabbers, or the greedy ones that are going to keep the pawn. You have c3 in this position. I've shown you briefly what it means. c3 you could take here, check, and then with the queen fork. You could just castle, start a deadly attack now. But let's talk about other possibilities in this position. You could play knight g5 in this position. And if your opponent plays knight h6 to protect, because this is a fork, right? These two pieces are attacking. It's very typical. This does not work because it's for free. So your opponent's going to play this, but you will hit them with a cold shower. Knight takes f7 again. In this opening, you will see, in this gambit, you will see that there are a lot of sacrifices on f7. Your opponent is probably going to be confused. Capture here, capture. Do you see the fork? Queen h5 check. g6, of course, is a move. King f8 is a move. A lot of moves. You just snatch the bishop. Your opponent can no longer castle. You could castle, play f4, bring the rook, start an attack. And this position is very pleasant for white. I personally feel much more comfortable playing with the white pieces. I mean, the pawns are kind of equal in this position, right? 7 to 7, but this one is going to collapse shortly if you maneuver and start putting more pressure, and these pawns are doubled. So this is regarding the pawn grabbers or the greedy chess players, let's say, right? What if our opponent plays check first? Well, if they give a check, there's another interesting move, same concept. And this, if you would like to play this opening, you have to be very comfortable with giving up pawns. So in this position, we talked about bishop c5. Bishop b4, you just play c3. Again, it's a pawn for free. Believe it or not, I would castle as well here. Of course, you could capture with a pawn or with a knight. It's not so good. I personally think it's not so good. I would just castle immediately. Chess is a race, and I'm giving up pawns to win that race. If the opponent captures, look at this. This is deadly. Knight f6, push. Knight, push. Look at this. This is very pleasant for white. Of course, you're down some pawns, but I personally would choose white every day over black. I would jump with the knight and jump there. The center is mine completely. Okay, so we've covered the two lines already, bishop c5 and bishop b4. Before we jump into more lines that are reasonable and stronger in case the opponent is familiar with this gambit, I would like to show you a bonus line or a trap as a reward for staying that long in this video, which is e4, same thing, e5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, we always play d4. Captures, we do not play bishop c4. This is let's call it a trap that you could try out in faster formats. Maybe if you play a little bit of blitz or bullet, you could play this. It's quite fun. You just jump immediately with the knight. It is not a good move. That is why it's only a trap and could work. And I assume it's going to work on a lot of your opponents because the tactic is not so clear. Your opponent is going to be confused and probably push attacking this knight. And now you just sack it. And you probably are going to say, yeah, but the queen, the king is going to capture it. It's a free knight. Yes, it is, but bishop c4. And your opponent has to be very cautious because now it's a check. And if they go back, this is a checkmate. So it's not easy. Let's go back to king f7 one more time. Check. So what can black do actually? If black goes with the king here, you just push this pawn. Same concept. You would like to you offer your opponent a pawn, but that's not the reason. The reason is that you would like to open the files and create more activity for your pieces. If the opponent captures, you capture back, and now you're threatening a check. They might play knight f6 to cover or to prevent this check, but you give it anyways. Captures, and now queen f7 is again devastating. Your opponent is probably going to play queen a8 to prevent you from playing queen f7, but you just sack your bishop. Check. Opponent has to capture. The king is being sliced by these two pieces. Takes, castle, check. And what is that? Checkmate. So one more time. You do not play bishop c4, you just jump with the knight and do the whole thing, sacrifice on f7. Feel free to try it out and let me know if it works. And if it doesn't, don't hate me for that. As I told you, it's just like, let's call it a weapon that you could have under your belt in case you run out of ideas or you would like to surprise your opponent. If you play against the same person, if you have a friend, chess friend you play all the time, you could try this out eventually. Okay, let's jump ahead into, as I said, into more reasonable moves. We said our opponent is going to capture bishop c4. We talked about this move and that move. Let's jump into the third option. That is the most reasonable one, of course, which is knight f6. This is the strongest move by far. It's attacking this pawn. Of course, there are two moves in this position. You could push This is a very strong move, and it is the strongest. But what I like to play, and I find it very confusing for my opponents, and it's so much fun, is to castle. If your opponent captures this pawn, you play rook e1. Give me the knight. This does not work, of course. This is not a good move because you could just play even bishop d5, and this knight is collapsing. But your opponent's probably gonna just go for the most intuitive one, which is d5. On d5, you just sack the bishop, believe it or not. You sack the pawn here and a pawn there, and now it's the bishop. Queen takes. Knight c3. Everything is pinned. It's crazy. You cannot take with the knight because there's a king. And if you take here, you lose your queen. So your opponent has to move somewhere else. A lot of players play queen h5. They go here, and then you capture. And this is very scary because on the next move, you're going to give a check. It's a fork, but it's a double check as well. So this is so much fun to play. This is one line you could try on knight f6. But the strongest one by far, assuming that your opponent is not going to do all of this, is just to push the pawn. And regardless where the knight goes, if the knight goes here, let's say, you just castle. And this is not a free pawn. Why is that? Same concept. And f4, the knight has collapsed. So the best move, I'm going to show you the best lines for black and show you that despite black playing the best moves, you're going to be completely fine. The best move would only be played if your opponent knows what they're doing and if they've seen this before, which is d5. You're attacking, I'm attacking. Of course, this is not good. Look at that, 2 pawns advanced, and black more or less has the center. And if you take here, it doesn't make any difference. Like you're helping black activate the bishop. So you do not capture. You do not capture. You play bishop b5. This knight is now attacked, and this knight cannot capture this pawn because it's pinned. Black is gonna jump with the knight to e4. Now you snatch this pawn. These two pieces are attacking the knight. Black has to do this, and now you capture here. Of course, the best move, believe it or not, which is a little bit counterintuitive, you double your pawns, because this opens the file for the rook and creates some counterplay for black. You just castle this, this, and this. And this is the best line if with perfect play, of course, from both players. Your opponent could play so many things. The most confusing line for me, of course, they could castle. If they castle, you could just play knight d2 and challenge this knight. But there's a very tricky move, which is queen b8. On queen b8, you have b3, of course, but you also have knight c3. You're sacking this pawn, and then you capture here. And the idea is you're giving up the pawn, but your opponent has a weak pawn structure, and it's gonna kind of compensate for this. But as I said, this is a very, very advanced line, and probably chess players that are like above 1500, way above 1500, would only know this. But for now, as I've shown you, the ideas are bishop c5, bishop b4, knight f6. Oops, knight f6. Of course, there's d6 in this position, which is a move you could always capture here, but I do not like to capture because it leads to equal positions, because you're going to exchange everything, basically. You just push, and even push further. And the idea is, have a look at that. You do not play bishop e2 here and castle, not yet. You could just immediately play c5. And what is the idea of c5, you might ask me? Of course, your opponent cannot capture. I mean, they could, but this is not good because doubled pawns, and this pawn has fallen, and you have 2 pawns in the center. So this is an idea, but I don't think your opponent is going to play it because it's so much passive play, and black is just in a lot of trouble. You take here, and these pawns are what we call hanging pawns. They're going to become a liability. You just play your bishop, you castle, they castle, you castle. And this is a weakness. You could always target it with many ways. You could even play b3, bishop a3, knight b5, and start targeting this pawn. And if this pawn falls, this one is going to fall as well. Okay, I would like to keep this video very light. I don't know if it's still light, but these are the main ideas of this opening. So, and what is nice about this opening, as a kid, why I liked it so much, as a kid you like to sack, of course, and play fun games, let's say, and strategy is still not like quite developed for you. It's a concept that you're not fully convinced of, so you like things that are flashy and tactics. But another reason was this opening is not like other openings. The King's Indian, it has like so many nuances, like when you block the center, when you open the center, you strike the center, things like that, and how to maneuver your pieces, put them on better squares. This position or this opening is more like you play with your calculations, tactics, and intuition. So you just go for activity, and it's a race, and you try to um, win material or deliver a checkmate. That is why I like it, and I find it a good starting point for many beginners, because you do not get overwhelmed with all these theories and lines and um, all of that. So that would be it for this video. I'm gonna create more detailed videos on this, and of course on the Scotch game, not the Gambit, but the Scotch game is basically when I'm gonna go all the way back, is when you play this, and it's not a Gambit because you just capture here. There are many lines. There's Bishop C5, Queen F6, there's Knight F6. There are so many lines. There's even check and going back to C5. I'm gonna cover this in details. Uh, but for now, I would like you to try out this one, the one that I've shown you, Bishop C4. It's a gambit. It's fun, and if, as I said, if you are just starting with openings and you are a beginner, you will see that you will convert a lot of these games into wins. That was it for this video. If you're watching till here, I really appreciate you, and I hope you found useful information in this video. I would really appreciate it if you hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.